The road. This video I like to call Admission to Guilt, also known as a confession. Hey, it's me. Hey, it's me, your good friend Jake, here with another crazy video. So, this video is about the short video I just posted, and I just wanted to provide some context to that last video, and maybe we can get something going here. So, in the last video, which I had just posted, I talk a lot about change, vaguely speaking. And that video was more for the purposes of comedic, entertainment, that kind of thing. And this video was more just for it's like a journaling thing. This is really more for me than it is for you. I don't really care if you watch this or not. I don't care if you get anything out of it. If you do, that's great, but it's not what I'm here for. So I thought I would make a quick little coffee here, and I would smoke one of these cigarettes, and I would just kind of let loose on what I've been thinking about for some time now. So I think the first thing to address is, what was I talking about in the video I just posted? So don't tell anybody, especially not your mom, and especially not your local sheriff, but I've been addicted to weed for around 5 years, maybe closer to 7. Depends on what you mean by addicted. But it's a pretty real addiction to some extent, Some say that addiction is when it's no longer a choice. And for years, that's kind of what it was like. I mean, not to the extent of someone who is an alcoholic or someone who is addicted to opioids or something like that. But, I mean, as far as addiction goes, I was pretty addicted to weed, let's say. I would self-identify as being addicted to weed. And it has slowly been killing me for the latter half of my life, if I'm being honest. It's been slowly destroying me. It's been destroying my dopamine receptors, and I don't know the whole science behind it, but I know my motivation is out of whack. My reward system, the circuitry up here, is not all correct because of my abuse of marijuana, mainly. I mean, I'm definitely partial to all kinds of drugs. You give me a drug and I'll be addicted in a week's time, probably less, but weed is kind of like my thing. It's my vice. And for years, it's been I've needed it. I've needed marijuana. I've needed it to function. I've needed it to enjoy life. Excuse me, loose change, excuse me. I've needed it to enjoy life. I've needed it to enjoy anything. And without it, the world is a lot more Dullsbury. And I suffer a lot more when I'm not partaking in the fruit that is cannabis. So what that video is basically like a almost ritual type video in which I break the last piece of smoking paraphernalia that I have, meaning now obviously I could go buy another one right now, or I could still roll a joint. I still have joint stuff over there, but it's more of a symbolic representation of the undertaking of not smoking weed anymore. And I've done this a lot, obviously. There's been a lot of times where I said I'm gonna give up weed, as many people who have addictions go through. They go through periods of I'm gonna give this up, and then maybe they do it for like a week, maybe less, and then before you know it, they're right back on the old stuff. And yeah, so sorry, I just got a message from my hot babe, number 8. Let me get back on track here. I'll text her later. Yeah, so what makes it different? What makes now different from all the other times that I've said I was going to stop? And I can't say there really is that much of a physical difference, but I want to, and this is kind of where I was going with this video, I want to talk about something, and I want to go deep for a second. And I'm not coming back, so this is the only deep video you're going to get from me. And then everything else is going to be, you know, surface level nonsense. But to go deep, and I am outside so I can't be too loud, but to go deep for a minute. So I get very sad sometimes. I get unusually sad at times, and maybe for longer stretches of time than a person should be sad, and maybe at a higher intensity than most people are usually sad, and usually not for any reason that I can point to. And that sadness, there's a lot of suffering in that. But here's my point. That's besides the point, but the context is necessary. So what I'm trying to say is that my life comes with a lot of suffering. All life comes with a lot of suffering. You know, we all suffer. And one of my biggest issues with that suffering that comes with my life is that it feels as if though it is thrusted onto me rather than self-imposed. And so I don't know why that is, or I don't necessarily know the reasoning for it. But it is there, and I get thrown into the pits of sadness sometimes. And against my will, that happens. And so, and this is why I'm so confident in the idea that this is it. This is the last straw. I'm finally giving up the old weed. And the reason why I feel that way is because instead of being thrown into the pits of sadness and suffering involuntarily, by not smoking weed anymore, I'm choosing to suffer voluntarily. And that's preferable because now it means the suffering is on my terms. Now, that doesn't mean that the regular old sadness is going anywhere. I doubt it is. And it doesn't mean that the suffering is going to be like less or more. I can't control that part about it. But with the giving up of a drug, with the giving up of the green sticky, and voluntarily embracing some aspect of suffering. And my mindset is, life is suffering. So some of it might as well be voluntary. And it's my assumption, I don't know if this is true, but it's my assumption that the more voluntary suffering you take on, the less involuntary suffering you have to go through. Now, I don't know if that's true, but I think it might be true. And there's only one way to find out. And so it's almost like an experimental thing at this point. But to go further, I'm also just tired of it. I'm tired of being the same old weed smoking guy. If you get to the point that I've gotten to, you smoke all day. You smoke all day every day. I mean, I don't smoke all day every day, but I do smoke a lot. Again, I do smoke every day, actually, now that I think about it. And it hasn't gotten so bad that I do it before work or during work, but basically, if I don't work, I'm smoking weed. And if I do work, I'm waiting for work to be over so I can go and smoke some weed. And that's a sad life. That's a sad life. And so me and my friends, we often make fun of people. And not you watching this, you're different. But me and my friends, we often make fun of people that, live for their next paycheck. They live for the weekend, let's say. Some people's goals don't go as far as some people's goals don't go farther than, I just want to get to the weekend so I can drink and forget that this work week happened and then do it all again the next week until I die. And some people's goals are that short term. And we always make fun of those people. But the hypocrite that I am, because I don't even look forward to my next weekend. I look forward to my next joint or bowl. And that's pretty pathetic. It's definitely more pathetic than those other people. And so with that realization comes the fact that I live for weed. And that just sucks, man. I mean, that's not who I want to be. And I know if you're watching this and you don't have any history of depression or addiction, it sounds kind of stupid because I'm making this huge video about something that doesn't affect you at all. And that's actually a great thing that you're not affected by it in this way. But the reason why I bring that up is because it even sounds stupid to myself when I talk about it, because I'm making such a big deal over this little plant that isn't, that you don't even like that much. I really like it. And I've grown to like it so much that I live for it. I'm alive because of the weed. Now, not actually. I'm alive for a lot more reasons than that. But what I'm saying is that my motivation to keep going is that next hit, that next high, that next inhale of smoke. That is what I'm living for. That is what I'm working towards. And as a result, my demands are being met, because it's easy to get weed and smoke it. It's very easy. So I'm stagnating. I've been stagnating for a long, long time. And what's interesting is there are certain times in my life where I actually did get off the green for a little bit. And what I noticed in those times when I gave up the green for a decent amount of time, I've given it up for like a month at one point, which is a lot for me. Within that month, I was so creative, so much more inspired. I was, and it wasn't even like a self-aware kind of inspired. I wasn't like, wow, I feel so much more inspired. It was more like I was so bored, and I was going fucking crazy from not smoking and being locked in my house all day, because this was around the time of COVID. So I wasn't smoking and I was in my house all day. So I just started banging out YouTube videos like they were nothing, just shit post after shit post, idea after idea, and not that any of those ideas were that good, but they were ideas and they were executed. So it seems to me that if I take away the quote unquote reward of weed, that something else has to take its place. And no other drug does it for me like weed does. Let me tell you something. And nothing is as easily accessible except alcohol. And alcohol is not even, I don't like it that much. But I do like weed. And if I remove that reward from my brain by not indulging in it anymore and just Xing it out, something else, a different kind of reward has to take its place. And whatever that is, I assume it's going to be better. Because I've been smoking for years, almost a decade now, and it really hasn't paid me back at all. Not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. So it's got to go. And that's what that last video meant. Sometimes you do have to do drastic things in order to inspire change in yourself. And I'm not saying breaking that peace was drastic. I really did have that peace for a long time. Like, that peace I've probably had for like 7 or 8 years. And I just smashed it because no more of this lifestyle. It's just not a good look. I don't like it. It makes me feel like a loser. I don't want to be a loser. I'm too smart for that. I'm too driven for that. I'm built different, man. Everybody knows it too. So why don't I just nut up and finally make the change necessary in order to grow as an individual? And so that's what I'm doing. And the reason why it's taken so long is because I fear change and I fear suffering. Those are two things that I fear. You might be afraid of clowns. You might be afraid of growing old. You might be afraid of the dark. Me, I'm afraid of change. I fear change and I fear suffering. I don't like pain. I'm a pleasure cuck. I love pleasure. I hate pain. And I strongly dislike suffering. And I don't like change. I like things to stay the same. But recently, a new fear has taken place, and that is the fear of not change. That is the fear of no change. That is the fear of stagnation, and the fear of not becoming your fully realized self. It's almost like a fear of fear or something. You know what I mean? Like I'm afraid of my fear that paralyzes me. And that fear that paralyzes me is so strong that it's actually starting to get me moving. And it had to come to this. It had to come to this. So, yeah. Sorry, I'm just getting a little more comfortable here while I light up this cigarette. And maybe I'm talking out my ass here. Maybe tomorrow I go to the weed store and get a new pipe and a fresh bag of green. You won't know about it if it happens, but you're gonna have to believe in me. Just this once, you're gonna have to believe in me. Just this once, I have to believe in myself. And that I can transform for the better, despite my fear of suffering. And another thing, the fear of suffering is not an intelligent fear to have, because you're fearing something that's guaranteed. Suffering is guaranteed. I think what also scares me about the suffering is that I don't know the intensity, nor do I know when it's going to hit. So I don't know when the suffering is, and I don't know how hard it's going to hit when it does. But when you give up a drug, and especially for me, if I give up weed, I know I'm going to suffer. I know I'm going to suffer all the time. But I can handle it. I have to. And it's not like it's that much different even if I did keep smoking weed, because I would suffer anyway. But this time, the suffering is on my terms. It's on my terms. I know why I'm going to be suffering. And I know when it's going to be, and I know how intense it's going to be. And here are the answers, by the way. It's going to be all the time, and it's going to be very intense. But knowing that means I don't have to be afraid. I can just embrace it and accept it. And that's what I plan on doing. I'm going to be suffering, probably for the rest of my life. I'm pretty sure I did permanent brain damage from my use of not only weed, but all kinds of crazy drugs. But that doesn't mean that I have to keep going down this beaten path. So yeah, I'm gonna suffer. So what? Good. I could use a little bit of suffering. Everybody could use a little bit of suffering. And the last thing I'll say, I'm gonna wrap it up here. I've been going for a while now. Is it gets old. It gets old because there are some weed crumbs in there that I could scrounge up and smoke. And I came out here and I thought about it for a second, and I considered it. I'm considering it now as we speak. And I thought to myself that even if I hit this and I get high, it's not really going to do anything for me, because I'm going to be suffering anyway. And so we've kind of come full circle. And it's almost like I don't really have a choice in the matter anymore. I mean, obviously I do, but what I'm saying is, like, if even that doesn't bring me pleasure anymore, then I really have nothing. And if I have nothing, then I might as well embrace that and learn to create something from that nothing. Malcolm McCormick, God rest his soul. Doing drugs is just a war with boredom. But they're sure to get me. And they got him. So, and one more thing I'll say. One more thing I'll say is this. My life isn't like fucked up. Like, I actually have a pretty good life as of now. You could call it decent. You could call it mediocre. But, like, relatively speaking, comparatively, I have a good life. It wasn't always like that, but it is like that now. So my life isn't all fucked up. But if I continue doing what I'm doing now, it will be in the future. And I have the foresight to see that. So, you like that cool fucking coffee and cigarette pose right there? That's fucking awesome. That should be a logo for like a podcast or something. But anyway, my life isn't fucked up, but it's kind of fucked up. And one of the things that fucks up a person's life, sorry for swearing, but I'm just trying to get my point across here, is being addicted to something. And that could be a drug, or it could be social media or pornography or any kind of unhealthy sort of addiction. And the number one best thing you can do, and I know this for a fact, this is objectively true, the number one thing you can do to unfuck your life is to somehow, some way, overcome that addiction. And if you can overcome whatever addiction you might have, which is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done, by the way, if you can manage that, your life will start unfucking itself. And things will start to fall into place. And your life will be better. And you shouldn't be keeping a good life from yourself. And when you stay addicted, and when you stay in that comfort, you like the way I talk? I should be a public speaker. If you get too comfortable in that little comfort zone, your life is going to suck forever. So you got to make yourself uncomfortable. And if you're not addicted to a drug, then I guess you like do rock climbing or something. But if you're addicted to something, that's how you get out of your comfort zone, is by not doing the thing you're addicted to anymore. Which is, again, the hardest thing that you're gonna have to do, like, ever. But look at the bright side. Look at the bright side with me. When you do eventually overcome that addiction, and you will, if you put your mind to it, you will. When you do overcome it, the hardest part is over. And you can get back to having a good time. and living a good life. But it all starts with that one step. It all starts with that one step towards change. And the only person that's going to change you is you.